Hello, and I'm Stephen Cummings, and welcome again to the Citizens Community Forum. It's that time when we discuss so many different issues here in Trinidad and Tobago, and of course our objective is always to have an engaging, interactive and civil discourse, and in so doing help develop a culture of peace and understanding through citizens' participation. Our guests are persons who express views, opinions and perspectives of their own, and sometimes may not necessarily be that of the FBN network, the Citizens Community Forum, or that of the host. Our topics are also wide-ranging. Discussions at times may be emotionally charged, but surely we can always find common ground and learn from each other irrespective of our differing views. Now, in attempting to understand human behavior and the development, it is also important to delve into human psychology and to understand socialization with some kind of cross-cultural analysis. Now, societies must have an ongoing conversation with itself on the business of human behavior if societies are to develop in the right and progressive way. But who is really willing to start that conversation? And where should it start when it comes to, let's say, dealing with self-identity and the way we sometimes respond to even crime and violence? One would agree that empowering people with information and the tools to think and self-express is also important when it comes to human behavior, development as well, and its impact on societies. But how can we go about achieving this? I have quite often heard it said that the level of violence and antisocial human behavior we see among, for example, our young people or young persons in society, for example, are a microcosm of the society we live in. Now, are these really symptoms of a larger societal issue? Is that a fair statement to make? And should the whole of society be blamed for the misguided or misdeeds of a few? Now, what is also important as well, what is, how can we really shape, the human value system? Is it socialization that we need to focus on, the way we have been brought up, or is it socialization that impacts our value system? Is there a formula for creating good, sound human development and behavior, as well as we talked about value systems? For example, if by some measure a society of people is described as having been socialized as a corrupt society, should that inform our value system? Some days ago, it was very startling to hear a former government minister, Karen Nunes Teixeira, speaking of her experience of having to fend off offers of corruption and bribes at very high level of society when she was in office. A very, very interesting statement there. And while Trinidad and Tobago remains in the throes of a COVID-19 pandemic, it appears as though another pandemic which has plagued many societies continues to rear its head in Trinidad and Tobago, as in other societies as well. That of mental stresses and the inability by some persons to adapt and to cope. Many have lost businesses and their economic way of life they once knew. What could be among the best advice that can be given to such persons whose development and impact on human or on society remains critical for societal resilience and continuity? Now, the stark reality is that our experience with what can be described as a social cancer remains very, very troubling. We on the Citizens Community Forum this time, we want to address some of those issues and see how we can find our way, possibly getting to some solutions to some of the issues that we face here in Trinidad and Tobago as a society. At this time, on the Citizens Community Forum, I want to take a closer look at the topic human development and its impact on societies. On our program at this time, I have with me Mr. Richard Solomon, Human and Organization Development Consultant. Mr. Solomon, good evening and welcome to the Citizens Community Forum.
Good evening, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. You're the first time on the program, so we have to give you a special welcome. I know we did have some, connections, connectivity a little earlier on, and we really wanted to have you on the program. Someone told me that nothing happens before it's supposed to happen.
It's time.
So I'm really happy that you're able to sit with us at this time. There are a couple of things we wanted to discuss, Richard, and I'm hoping that you can help us through. I'm not an expert in this business of human development, and that's why I see you as being that guide, as it were, that tour guide, or sort of help us kind of extrapolate, help us kind of unravel some of the mysteries when we talk about human development. And I want to sort of to raise the first question with you. Firstly, what do you think, Richard, should be or can be a good working definition in helping us understand human development?
A working definition, that's an interesting question. Well, humans, like most animals, progress in some way or the other. And I say most animals because we have a lot in common with those that we call animals. We are much more aware, and therefore that awareness drives us to want to achieve. And so the development, if I were to define it, I would say it is the progression, the positive progression to a higher state of humanness. Because if you use the word development, then that doesn't exactly have an end result. It is a continuous sort of work in progress process, yes. Yeah, so it's that continuous movement towards a better you, me, whomever it is. That's how I would define it anyway.
All right, well, and that's a good place to start as we begin the discussion this evening on the Citizens Community Forum. I'm sometimes troubled, Richard, picture this scenario. Imagine two children born in the same town and, in the same year, to the same families, obviously, with similar socioeconomic stresses or issues that they have to face. One child grows up to be assertive and confident, while the other grows up to be timid and shy. Why is that sometimes the case, and what can account for such differences in human behavior?
So I have literally read hundreds of studies trying to answer that question. And so what you are raising is the old nature-nurture question. Does it come from my genetic makeup, or does it come from the environment? Well, the answer is both, and we're not exactly sure what is the amount or what is the contributory amount. What we do know, Stephen, is that the likelihood of someone becoming, let's use the term successful, is greater if they are shaped and formed in an environment that is stable and nurturing. That is a given. The likelihood that you would end up in a lesser position, if we're talking about development, is greater when you are shaped and formed in an environment that is difficult, trying, traumatic, etc. However, your issue is the point that you raised, or the question that you raise, is useful, because we do have examples of twins, which is a much better way of looking at it. Twins, so they are identical to each other. They don't have separate DNA. And these twins, these identical twins, go in very different directions in terms of their formation and their development. The truth is that there is no exact formula to explain that. One way of looking at it that I remember coming across a paper years ago that was looking at personality development. And it is almost as if we self-select impacts from the environment. And I use self-select, it sounds as if it's a very active thing. It's not very active until a certain age. We self-select different things from the environment. And so therefore, you and I, assuming we were twins, in the same environment, could self-select and therefore be impacted very differently by the same set of circumstances. I therefore go one way and you therefore go another. I'm not so sure it's a perfect answer to your question, but I don't think there is a perfect answer to that question. We don't know exactly why humans end up or behave in this way.
All right, so again, that process continues to find, whether there is a formula, or if in fact, we can, create, have that system, as it were. It's a very, it appears to be a very complex issue, Richard. When we talk about human beings, and sometimes, how they behave, how they, I suppose, it's certainly behavior impacts on society, and the kind of
Yes.
societies that we have as a result of how, humans adapt to their environment. And it's a very complex thing.
It is an absolutely complex thing. There's a quote that I like that says, seeking the mechanisms by which the brain produces thoughts and feelings and enduring dispositions is like asking for the mechanisms by which the printing press creates poetry. You see, we're trying to explain something that is so much deeper than we are able to really wrap our minds around. But let's stay with what we know. We know that if you take 100 people, children, because children are born almost a blank slate, if you want. And I say almost because we do inherit some things from our forebears,
Yes.
both in terms of our genetic makeup and also epigenetically. Or we can come back to that term. Let me just say what it is. Epi means on top of or outside of. So our base genetic makeup remains the same. But we inherit that from our parents, and they are from their parents. But on top of that, there is an external protein that gets formed that causes genes to behave differently, therefore causing you to think and act differently. Which is a fascinating thing, if you think about it. So if you take 100 people, put them in a certain environment, that environment will dispose them, more of them in a particular direction than another.
Right. Again, as you said, a very, very complex, very complex issue there when dealing with human and human development, and of course, by extension, the impact on societies. And we just want to remind our listeners and our viewers that this is the Citizens Community Forum. Stephen Cummings speaking with Mr. Richard Solomon, Human and Organization Development Consultant. Our topic: human development and its impact on societies. It's also interesting to, Richard, that, when we talk about this business of human development and its impact on societies, one would also agree that empowering people with information and tools to think and self-express is also important when it comes to human behavior and development and its impact on societies. But how, one of my questions has always been, how can we go about, achieving this in an effective way?
Yeah.
What would be your viewpoint?
Yeah, we have to go back to the education system, Stephen. Our education system, and I say our, I don't necessarily mean particularly Trinidad and Tobago. Much of the Western world is designed to create restrictions.
And we're not talking about COVID-19 and the pandemic, for which we are still...
No, not those kinds of restrictions, but restrictions of thought. So it is not unusual that you go to an office, maybe it's a public service organization, and there's a problem, or even a private sector organization. I've had these experiences, and there's something that needs to get done. It's not the norm. It's not the normal request that gets made in that particular place. And people behave as if they're lost because it's not the norm. Now, for me, the only way that I can explain that is that they have not allowed themselves, or maybe other people have not allowed them, room to think. I mean, to really think. So how do we now get humans to think beyond the scripts that we've been handed? Because that's the question. Well, for me, that has to go back to baby school. Because essentially, see, we have to remember the system of education that as we know it today was not really designed for the kind of thinking that the world requires in the here and now.
Okay.
It was designed to produce people to work in factory systems, right? And so we're trying to break out of that. You see, we learned years ago that, well, there's a right way to do things and there's a best way to do things. And if you know that best way, then you teach it to others, and then you must teach them to think within that same box and do it that way. Of course, that doesn't work anymore. As a matter of fact, the fact that we are able to communicate like this is testimony to that not working anymore. People have been able to think outside of those, and therefore the education system needs to encourage people to think differently. And I think it starts there. I think it starts in the home as well. Many homes, many parents, and I don't chide parents too harshly on this, but I'll say it, many parents are very limited. And I keep drawing this box, are very limited in what they allow children to consume in terms of information to discuss. It would be surprising maybe to some of our listeners, or maybe not, that many homes don't discuss with their children politics, history, sociology, those kinds of issues, religion. As a matter of fact, I remember growing up, you were told, don't discuss politics and religion. Two very important institutions in our society.
Yes, yes.
You know, so I think it's giving people the room to be able to have the conversations, to think about whatever the issues are, and to raise those issues in respectful ways.
So again, we are seeing where there's been a deficit where that kind of discussion is concerned, even within the home at the very tender age, a very early age, and I think three of the more troubling topics, Richard, you mentioned two of them, sex, religion, and politics. Always been taboo subject areas in many societies, and I believe that if we have to develop, the human condition, we have to be discussing these issues. So you're correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And you put sex in there, and you're absolutely right about that. Many people who grew up in the 60s and 70s had to find out the information on the side. Wherever that side was, might have been in school, you piece things together and so on. Many parents didn't do a very good job, which creates other kinds of problems in the society as well.
Problems that impact on society.
Absolutely.
And that's our central,
Yes, absolutely. I understand the discomfort that humans have and adults have with these very contentious issues. But for me, as an adult and with my children, I have said to them, question everything. Question everything. It's okay. It's okay to question everything. It's okay to wonder, why is this so? Okay, so someone said we should fill in the blank, whatever that blank is.
Yeah.
Why? Where did that come from? Why did we start doing that? And I have so many examples in my head, but they tend to get pretty contentious, so I don't know if I should raise them.
Yes.
But that, having that, being able to do that and get comfortable with even the unknown. If you don't know, you don't know. As an adult, many times adults don't want to broach particular subjects because they don't know and they can't necessarily guide. We can find the information.
Yes, and especially now, with the explosion of this information age and the digital society as we know it. We have become a global village because of the technology. So it should be much easier now to get that kind of information. And one of the troubling things with Oldsman as well, while we appear to have progressed in terms of technology and information, we seem to be having the same kinds of old issues to treat with, Richard. You mentioned about that lack of information and that gap, that I suppose we would have experienced many decades ago within families. And one would think that with what's happening now, with the internet and the digital economy, and things should have been much better. And I'm wondering, why is there still that disconnect?
Well, the information is there. However, we used to call it the information superhighway when it got started, right? What the World Wide Web doesn't do for us, it doesn't give us the mindset to inquire. It doesn't give us the desire for truth. It doesn't present to us information that helps us to come to reasoned conclusions. It's just information. Many years ago, I heard someone say, it's like if you went into a library and all the books were on the floor. The books are there. You now have to go and think about, pull one, sit, read, look at it, and so on. So the information is there. But if you do not have inside of you this desire for wisdom, to Really learn, not just to confirm what somebody has already told you or what you already believe, because this is part of the challenge.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Too many people are using these devices for social media, whatever it is we do on social media. Some of us connect, some of us read news or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that if your biases are what is driving you, then the systems will feed you more of that which you are biased to. That's how they are designed. The word algorithm tells us about that.
Yes. Yeah.
They are designed to feed us more of that which we are biased or leaning to. So you end up with in a far worse position in terms of your knowledge, in terms of your wisdom. The information is there, but the system cannot give us the desire to really understand and the desire to really get wise. Because having information is not enough. Mm-hmm. Having information is not going to make you successful. Just yesterday, I was talking to a group of entrepreneurs and we were talking about success and so on. I said, it's great to have a coach and go and learn and all this wonderful stuff, read good books, but you have to get up and do. Yes. And in the case of the development of a society, having access to information is a good thing, but most people are just products in that system, consuming information and ramping up the advertising dollar, but that's pretty much it. Not taking the time to sit and read. I told you I've read hundreds of papers. Literally, most people will not read a paper. Most people will not even read an article. How many times have we seen, I'm sure the listeners probably can attest to this, you go on social media and there's some contentious issue. Yeah. Somebody posted a picture with a caption and people are commenting on the caption. Now, if you go and
without reading the details,
thank you,
without looking at the story behind the story,
exactly, without even doing the justice to whatever that is, to go and inquire, well, what is happening here? What are they saying? And then come up with some kind of reasoned opinion.
Critical analysis, yes.
Thank you.
Critical thinking, yes.
And therefore, the systems cannot give us that. You know, that is something we have to develop within our society, within our schools and our communities, within our homes. We have to develop that there.
All right, again, very, very important. And this is the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. I'm speaking with Richard Solomon, a human and organization development consultant. Our topic this evening, human development and its impact on societies. Richard, I came across some very important bit of information, and it had to do with several stages of human development. And one of the topics dealt with infancy, trust versus mistrust. And just referring to that bit of information here, it says in the first stage of human development, infants learn to trust based on how well their caregivers meet their basic needs and respond when they cry. If an infant cries out to be fed, for example, the parent can either meet this need by feeding and comforting the infant, or not meet this need by ignoring the infant. And it goes on to say that when there's needs, when their needs are met, infants learn that relying on others is safe. When the needs go unmet, infants grow up to be less trusting.
Yes,
your response to that?
Very, very true. And I mean, if you think about the development of children, and you think of a society or societies where at some time in its history, children's needs were not met. I'm going somewhere with this, so just stay with me. Where large amounts of those children's needs were not met in infancy, and that continued for a significant time. It should not be passing strange to anyone that those societies are mired in certain types of mistrust and violence and so on. So we had the system of slavery, and I am a pseudo-historian. I like to think of myself. You can't understand these issues well, in my opinion, none of them, politics, religion, human development, unless you look at the history.
Yes.
So if we look at our slave history,
indentureship, yes.
Well, before I'll come to indentureship in a moment.
Get there, but certainly, yes. Go ahead, please.
Yes, but I purposefully separate them because they are different, right? our slave history has conditioned us in a particular manner. This is not unique to people in Trinidad and Tobago alone. Remember, I talked about epigenetics before. Mm-hmm. Your genes are altered. If, for example, your mother was hungry while she was pregnant, you are born with a low birth weight, not just because she didn't have enough food, but so that you will need less food when you are born, mm-hmm. increasing your chances of survival. Mm-hmm. And I can go on and on. There are many cases, the 9/11 situation, mothers who experience that their children are more disposed to certain mental and emotional issues, right? So we know that these experiences will change the individual. And so we had thousands and thousands of people who experienced these kinds of challenges, traumas, and so on. Indentureship was branded slavery reinvented. Now, it wasn't as bad as, but it was bad. We know that for a fact. We have the history. So if you add those two things, together and you put large amounts of people in the society, you can only imagine what begins to come up. Plus, as a society, many of us were taught by our foreparents that if you behaved badly, whatever bad behavior was, well, you need a good, you know what? And so that wasn't just a 1 finger or 2 finger rule, as a cousin of mine had. As you aged, you know, she would add fingers. Yeah. And it really wasn't bad. It really wasn't bad because I'm much younger than her. But in some cases, this was abuse and very traumatic. And so this stays with us, right? It stays with us. So we're talking about, you gave the example of crying out for attention or feeding or so. True. And then add to that all of these other kinds of things that happen to children in very young ages. And therefore, we have a lot of people walking around this society with major challenges, really major challenges in terms of development.
Right. So again, you know, we're seeing the impact of that, you know, being played out into in real time, you know, in the current, you know, societal makeup, and not just here in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the world. And one must also make the point that Trinidad and Tobago is not unique in this sense. You know, sometimes we tend to think that the issues that we face here might be unique to us, but no. You know, if you look at other societies and the development of humans and how, you know, how the history would have shaped us, we would see some of the very same things that we're experiencing today would have been the same decades ago.
Yes, absolutely. And what is sad for me is that it seems as if many of our leaders are not learning those lessons. You see, that's what it seems like. So we have a society here, Trinidad and Tobago, where we are obviously challenged. We have done well for ourselves. Maybe I should say that we have done well for ourselves given what we had at the start of this nation, right? So coming out of our colonial past, we have done pretty well for ourselves. In comparison with many of our neighbors, economically, certainly we have done well for ourselves. But our pains and our hurts show up. And then when you add to that, lots of money that has flows through the society, one. And when you add to that, lots of guns that keep flowing through the society, the amount of violence that we experience as a society is painful. But I wonder, what do we expect? And I wonder too, when will we get to a stage as a society where we say, you know what, we've got to fix this. Not we have to put a plaster on it or a balm on it, but we've got to fix this. And fixing it for me looks like we need to go back to baby school. I like to say baby school.
All right.
We have to start there. We have to go back to families and begin to strengthen those. Because again, it is the environment that is going to condition us in a particular way. Right. Stephen, look at what happened, and I'm going on a little bit long with this. Look at what happened when schools reopened recently. Did you see the explosion of violence?
Yes.
No. There are some people who said, well, you know, that has always been there. People are filming it more. That might be true. But it seemed like there was something pent up that just exploded.
Right.
You know?
And Richard, you raised a very important point there. I want you to expand on that further, but what we want to do at the moment is that we have to take a break. We have to take a short break, and when we come back, we will continue the discussion. And this is the Citizens Community Forum. Stephen Cummings. I'm speaking with Richard Solomon, and he is with us. Our topic, human development and its impact on societies. Richard, we will be back in a short bit. We do have to take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue the discussion.
Thank you. Looking forward.
The University of the West Indies has the capacity to generate its own funding, or at least part funding. Is that what I'm getting from you?
Yes, Stephen, thank you very kindly. You have put it in a precise language. If they have been doing that, it is to a minuscule extent.
Somebody tried to ask me, so what do you want? I said, brother, let me do good. Sometimes, even as a person, you ain't sure what you want, but you're absolutely sure what you don't want. And workers are absolutely certain that this 2% that is on offer is an insult.
2% over an 8-year period and tell your boy, oh God, cool it, you know, things are hard. No. Are we living in a different Trinidad and Tobago? And that is what we have to discuss.
Discussion on health, leadership, governance, crime, education, and social justice. Every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m., the Citizens Community Forum. Your host, Stephen Cummings. And welcome back to the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. This evening on the program, I have with me Mr. Richard Solomon, and we are discussing the topic human development and its impact on societies. Richard, welcome back.
Thanks, Stephen. Good to be back.
Yes. Before we went to the break, you were making a very important point, and looking at that linkage between violence and what's happening within the schools, and we know that that can even extend to the wider society as we talk about this process of the human and human development. I'd want you to sort of expand a little more on that, so that we can get a clearer picture as to how we got here as a society.
Well, I mean, any phenomenon in the society has multiple contributory factors, obviously. And I think I alluded to some of our earlier ones in terms of our slavery past and our indentureship past. Those were the very, very difficult times. Colonialism wasn't exactly a walk in the park either, because colonialism is always done for the benefit of the colonizer. Absolutely. Always, there's no exception to that, right? And I'm yet to hear somebody put forward a different argument that is cogent. So that was an exploitative system. But when people live through those kinds of systems, they inherit certain things, behaviors, attitudes, and so on. And so we've inherited lots of that, a lot of that. And the way we treat with these kinds of issues somehow has not gotten to a place as a society where we are able to shepherd some of our younger ones. And I can't say all, because we've got some very solid people that come up within the society. But there is enough in this society, enough of this anger, this rage, this outrage, this pain, that causes us to be fearful. So if we talk about school violence, we can't not talk about the crime in our society. And crime is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago, obviously, but clearly some of our numbers are just astronomical.
Startling.
And so startling is a very good word. I mean, you cannot walk into, and I regularly say this in another place, you cannot walk into a mini mart or one of these little grocery stores in the neighborhood and not look over your shoulder. It's the norm that we look over our shoulders. Why? Because you don't know what's going to happen, because we've all seen the videos. We've seen the videos where, there's some little fender bender or some little thing happens. No one is hurt and people want to get violent, because there's so much pent up in us. And so the question here is, what do we do about that? Because these things did not just happen on their own. Not all societies behave that way. Now, crime is a facet of all societies. There's no such thing as a society without crime. So crime exists, violence exists everywhere. But the sheer volume of it in our small 1.4 million people is startling to use your word. So the question then becomes, well, why is it that there's so much of it in this place, in this small place? And I want to suggest it's the history, but the present contributes to it. I don't believe, and I have not seen what I would consider to be a sustained national effort to develop the people of our society in terms of their ability to reason, in terms of their ability to manage conflict, in terms of their ability to find answers to their own challenges and be self-sufficient, in terms of the issues of being honest and staying away from all the various fraud-related issues of which we have way too much of for a small society like ours. I have not seen a sustained effort to make that happen.
Well, you know, Richard, you're not alone in that view. In that, I mean, I'm just recently our Prime Minister talked about declaring crime and violence as a public health emergency. Whatever he means, I mean, that he may still have to define what that means. You know, whether it means a militarization of the society, which would bring in itself its own problems, because you can't. There's no big stick, solution towards dealing with these issues. One of my other questions has also been whether there should be an attempt at real reformation of the family unit. Because, there's where we have our children being nurtured and parents and caregivers, having the responsibility to ensure that they give the right kind of instructional to children so that we have better and modeled citizens.
Public health, that's one way to look at it. And it is, in fact. And I don't know what our constitution allows if one were to declare crime and violence to be a public health issue.
That would take us into another realm.
I imagine it would, but here's the thing, Steve. We are trying to put the horse back into the stable.
Because remember, Richard, we're treating with human behavior, human development and human behavior.
Yes.
You have to just want to remind our listeners that this is the Citizens Community Forum, and
yes,
Mr. Richard. Yes, Richard, go ahead.
We are dealing with this issue, and I would like to suggest that we look at it from two perspectives. We do need the lag factors. So lead and lag indicators is a term that we use in business. Lead indicators say, well, this would have contributed or will contribute to this outcome, whatever the outcome is. Lag is after the fact.
Is it the same as cause and effect? Help me here through.
To some extent, yes. Okay. So let me see if I could be a little clearer. When we say, okay, let's use an organization. So we do a budget. Yes, and the budget says we'll spend $10 on a particular thing. Well, we'll track that, and at the end of the period, we may have spent $9 or $11 or whatever it is. That's a lag indicator. It's after the fact. Whereas the lead indicator is predictive of the outcome. So when we say we have had 300 murders for the year, that's a lag indicator. Important, and it is usually on the basis of this that those in leadership roles in government and so on would say, well, these are the strategies that we would adopt. Great, I have no trouble with that. We need those lag factors. We need strategies built on lag factors. But you'll never get over this by only dealing with the after the fact issues. You need to. What do they look like? Well, so children are being suspended because somebody was bullying somebody and then someone had a knife and something like that. We need more jails, and police officers need body cameras, and we need to put people in prison, and we need the judicial system to be fixed. All of those things are true. No denying that, but those are all after the fact. You don't get into any of those systems until you've done something.
So those are the plasters, really.
Those are after, yes. No, and this is not to twaddleize. They are important, but they will not change the root of the problem that we're having. We need to go to the lead indicator. So the question has to be, what is it about our society that is causing children and adults to behave this way? Why? And begin to know, as we answer those questions, and I have called on, and I'm going to call on again, the universities, academia need to do the research. The universities need to go into civil society and figure out, into societies rather than communities, and figure out why is this occurring and where the research exists, because that's what research is for. It's not just so that you get a mark on a paper or something like that. It's meant to improve the world that we live in. So when we gather that data and we're able to analyze it, and it can tell us, okay, these are the things that's contributing to these outcomes, lead indicators. Then we need our leaders, government and so on, to make decisions and build strategies for those. Because those are the things that will predict the outcome that we want. We want an outcome where I don't have to lock my doors.
Yes.
Not that you should leave them open, but if you happen to, no one is going to come in.
There isn't that constant element of human fear. Yes.
Correct. That is what we would like. And this is not to say we expect that we would live in a utopia. That's not what we are saying. But there are societies that don't behave this way. And so if there must have been things that contributed to it, some of which I mentioned. And so if we know what the contributory factors are, we can begin to build strategies that will help us to change the outcome. Those strategies have to be long-term, Stephen.
Yes.
And they cannot work in 5-year blocks.
But again,
they cannot work in 5-year blocks.
But again, therein lies the problem, Richard. I think, most of our issues here when it comes to not just policy, but implementation. We may have these wonderful studies, these case studies that you've made mention of, and certainly tertiary level institutions such as if we look at the University of the West Indies, which have their own problems, they would tell you. But certainly we have not really been doing the kinds of in-depth studies, the kinds of in-depth, and they should have the responsibility of really bringing the information, because without the research, without the information, there's no way that we can formulate policy and to treat with the society, and you reference that. But going further on this very same important topic, I have quite often looked at what happens in the parliament, and not just the parliament here in Trinidad and Tobago and in other parts of the world. And for a sense, Richard, there's a kind of, I don't know if I'm putting this in the right context, but there's a kind of violence sometimes that I see emanating. And when I say violence, not the physical, not the throwing of furniture and that kind of thing, but a kind of psychological violence that is usually played out even at our parliamentary level. You have, for example, members getting up and speaking over the speaker or the Senate president. You have members who are just unruly. We've seen it in past months, especially close to the times of elections, and so you have this kind of barbarism. That's probably a strong word, but there's no way else no other word that I can find at the moment. You have that kind of uncivil behavior that happens even at our parliamentary level. And I'm saying that if we have to deal with and treat with human development, and we have to focus and we have to be that kind of mentor or get into that business of mentorship to the younger persons, it also has to start at some of the higher levels in society.
So humans get angry. It's an emotion, and it's okay to be upset and angry. Yeah, the middle brain is going to produce neurotransmitters that make us feel something. It might be anger sometimes, it'll be happiness and joy other times. We know that. Self-regulation is what is required, however. And you are right, we expect more of that from those whom we have placed in leadership above us.
But self-regulation, Richard, is one of the more difficult things to achieve.
Absolutely.
One is socialized in a certain way. I've been, brought up into a society of knowing just to do things this way. It's very difficult to employ that kind of self-regulation. But I would allow you to develop that point that you made.
But you see, and I agree with you, but we need examples from those in leadership. And I'm not just talking about politicians now. I'm talking about our trade union leaders. I am talking about our teachers. I'm talking about our nurses and doctors, people in influential positions, of course, including our politicians, to demonstrate different behavior, to demonstrate that, yes, I can be upset. Let us not be disingenuous. We will not be. We know humans get upset, and that is normal. There is nothing wrong with that. But to demonstrate that I have the ability to manage myself, because if you cannot lead yourself, how can we possibly put you to lead anything else, including an entire nation? whichever nation it happens to be. And you're right, we don't throw furniture here in Trinidad and Tobago. I've seen that happen in other parliaments.
At least not just yet. Let's hope.
Well, prayerfully, we never get to that stage.
We never get to that stage, yes.
But I don't think we demonstrate the collective concern for the nation by virtue of, one, the self-regulation that is necessary, but also by virtue of the type of ongoing developmental efforts. Too many times when I see decisions being made, strategies being implemented, they seem to be illogical. They don't seem to be focused on the aims and the objectives that we are interested in. To your point about the universities, and you mentioned the UE, and I have nothing against the UE. I've been a guest lecturer there on a couple occasions. If it were up to me, Stephen, in a situation like this, we know we need answers. We need our researchers to go in and figure out what's going on. There are a number of things that can be done. I would think that we would aim the limited resources that we have as a nation towards those things that are most important to us. How can we do that? Well, quite simply. You know, we say you get GATE for one program now, one degree, and we've scaled it back, and I think it's only 7 institutions. Yes. And then it wouldn't, so it's for one. So if you've got them a bachelor's, you won't be able to get a master's. If you've got an associate, you can't get a bachelor's. Well, if we have challenges in the area of violence and crime, we have challenges in the area of human development and psychology, then we can put some money into that, more money, lopsided money. I'm saying, yeah, it doesn't have to be even across all faculties. Right. So that more research could go in there and more efforts are made there and more people are attracted to those areas. If we say we're not growing the food that we need, similarly, we could do it for agriculture. I think many times we use resources in a sort of haphazard way, and it's not based on the lead and lag factors. It doesn't seem logical in all cases. It is almost as if we're throwing mud at the wall and hoping that some of it will stick there. But we need to be more cogent and connected when we look at these kinds of issues, and we need leaders to set the example. Set the example, and we need leaders who can make decisions independently of other influences. Right? Right. So maybe I'll say it differently. Make decisions that are in the best interest of the people. After all, isn't that what democracy is? Democracy is about electing leaders, not just to elect them, but that they would make decisions in line with what is best for the masses, right? So I know I'm going off on a bunny trail here, but let me complete my thought. One, political people in political office must be able to be free from undue influences. And therefore, we need campaign finance reform. I've heard both sides of the aisles talk about it. Yes. No one has taken it on as yet. One, campaign finance reform. We need referendum and recall to make this a real democracy. See, because when we have major decisions to make, I would like my voice heard. I don't only want my voice heard once every 5 years. I would like my voice heard, regardless of who gets into power, on major issues. And recall is simply to say, we elected you, yes, but you know what? We look at your performance and we have found you wanting, and the mass of us, we are saying, we need to recall you. Maybe we need somebody else in that position. That will change things.
Richard, right? I sense that we have to have a separate program, you know, to focus more deeply on the politics of the society.
Well, you see,
but there is connectivity. Yes.
There is connectivity. Thank you. Yes.
But human development and how we behave, you know, as a society. And I did mention, you know, that scenario there even within our parliamentary democracy here in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, you know, we do operate a Westminster style system, which we have inherited from colonial days, which is still with us, you know. But again, you know, maybe we need to craft a new way of doing things.
Well, I don't know, you know, Stephen. Hold on. Let me just interject there. We saw Boris Johnson just resign from his position. I can't help but bring this in because we like to talk about the Westminster system, right? Boris Johnson had been found wanting. People were saying in the party, it's time to leave, Boris, it's time to leave. And Boris refused to leave. and 50 people within 24 hours or 48 hours resigned from major significant positions and therefore forced his resignation.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't see things like that happening in our democracy. We don't see that. It just doesn't come. We say we have a Westminster system, but it is not.
It doesn't relate to some of the realities you're saying.
We cherry pick.
Somebody has to go kicking and screaming. Yeah.
Being dragged out. You know, to me, our system needs to, and it's not the system, our people, both the electorate and those who we put in office need to be politically and behaviorally mature enough to realize you're outside of your depth, or this is not for me, or I'm doing a disservice, or you are doing a disservice, and therefore this is not what we want. So I hear the Westminster, but we pick and choose the pieces that work for us or work for certain people, and that we're not going to be able to develop a nation in the way that we otherwise could, because we are punching way below our weight as a nation. But let me let you bring it back to where you were going, because yes, you're right, we do need a different discussion for that.
Yes, indeed, and we just want to remind our listeners and our viewers that this is the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. I'm talking with Mr. Richard Solomon, a human and organization development consultant, and we are on the topic human development and its impact on societies. Now, I want to also bring in the question of the church and faith-based organizations within, the realm of that process of development of the human. Now, we have known for many decades that had it not been for, and I don't want to use the word religion, but had it not been for that business of that institution within which people hold so dearly to their faith, we would have had a worse society. Throughout the world, it has been, it's documented that the church and faith-based organizations do have a role to play within the society. Do you think, from your view, Richard, that enough is being done, or enough has been done to impact on this very same question of human development and human behavior? Should they be doing more? And how do you see the role of the church and faith-based organizations?
Well, you're opening up a Pandora's box, because earlier on you alluded to infants, when they cry out, maybe in hunger and they're not fed, they don't trust their caregivers. Well, I dare say that many faith-based organizations are in that place right now. Great levels of mistrust. Now, here's the thing. We have to remind ourselves that these institutions are run by humans. These humans come from the very society, like all other institutions. So whether it's the prison system,
yes.
There we go. So we're not going to get a perfect institution, but we've had such egregious failures within faith-based organizations across all types and makeups and constructs, that many people really do, as we say in Trinidad and Tobago, look at those with a kooky eye. It's like, we're not so sure that we can trust you. And it's very difficult to shepherd people in a particular direction if they don't trust you. You are right. Faith-based organizations should play a great role. And some are. Let me don't paint them all with the same brush. I know that there are some that are really making an effort. But too many times these show up more like organizations that are there for these particular activities, not there to guide, support, and help the community. And so I take issue with that. Whenever there's a faith-based institution and people are in trouble, and that faith-based institution is not activated, my question immediately is, why are you there? Whenever there is a faith-based institution and the community is struggling in whatever way, and the organization is not activated, meaning we are not making an effort, my question is, why are you there? Because people, we are a deeply religious society.
Yes, we are.
for whatever reason, and I mean, I don't want to go into the history of that because that's another program, right? But we are deeply religious society. But somehow I don't think that that religiosity translates into transparency and honesty. And in many of these communities where we have many of these faith-based institutions, they have some of the most difficult societal ills showing up. And it would suggest that not enough is being done. I don't believe that nearly enough is being done. And it's not just the faith-based, but your question is faith-based. So let me answer the question that was asked. I don't think that nearly enough is being done. Too much of what these institutions are doing stays within their four walls. And so if I were to borrow from the life of people, the life of the people who they call Jesus, I say who they call because, of course, Yeshua, but Jesus. Well, his work wasn't within four walls. See, so the faith-based institutions, if you see pain in the society, you see broken homes and broken families and broken people, your job is to heal and to help heal and to reach out. So they do have a role, but I don't see enough of that taking place. I remember when I was a young boy, which is just the other day, you would have churches coming out and they would have things on the corner, or they would come to people's home and invite the children to activities. This time of the year they would have I don't know if those things happen anymore. I don't know.
Quite apart from the traditional Sunday school and the Bible study.
Right, but activities and so on.
Yes.
To get the children into activities that are wholesome and to keep them out of dangerous situations. I was having a conversation with my wife on this topic recently, just maybe last night. And we were reflecting on one of the young men that was unfortunately killed with a police-involved shooting recently. And I heard one of the mothers indicating that, well, he was a church boy, you know. And I mean, I have no way of being able to know whether that is true or what a church boy means in that case. But in my own mind, I think, where was he? Why was he there? If he's a church boy, why was he there? Where was he? This is not to justify the actions of anyone, huh?
Sure. Yeah.
But it is to say that our opportunities being created to keep those who are younger and impressionable and are most vulnerable, because that is the age, it is in the teens that they get you.
Yes, impressionable.
By these religious institutions, by these faith-based institutions, because it cannot just be about conducting services and so on. That's good. But if people are hungry, they need to be fed.
I see where you're going. I see where you're going, Richard, with that. You know, there has to be, a practicality. There has to be going down in the trenches and
yes,
becoming real.
Yes.
Even sometimes the language that is that you hear, you need to be in tune with persons who would understand the language. You know, you can't go within a particular society and not be able to understand what are some of the real issues to be addressed.
Yes.
To start with, and we just want to remind our listeners that this is the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. I'm talking with Mr. Richard Solomon. He is a human and organization development consultant, and this is the Citizens Community Forum. Our topic, human development and its impact on societies. Richard, we have just a few minutes again before we end the program, but I wanted to sort of before letting you go, I wanted to also touch a bit on this business of when we talk about a society and policies, and there is the wider societal and economic construct as well, that of macroeconomic policies, as some say, may have a direct impact on human development and behavior, resulting sometimes in crime and violence.
Yes. So Trinidad and Tobago is an interesting place in terms of that particular construct. We have, for many years, straddled a line that seems to say, on the one hand, we will do our best to, and maybe best is not the word, but the state has over the years, done a better than average job in this part of the world of supporting citizens. However, that support seems to have turned into a kind of a, well, we expect that you will do that, you're supposed to do that. Not recognizing, however, that while the state needs to enact policies that will support the people, must happen, the people also need to contribute in terms of their work. So we have a very strange situation where there is an expectation that the state will continue to support the society. Nothing is wrong with that, because the position I take on that is the money doesn't belong to the government. The money belongs to us as the people, right? But somebody has to administer it. And so the policies that we make in terms of support for people, in terms of wages, in terms of human development at the level of our tertiary education institutions, and even our secondary and primary education institutions are critical. We have some systems that need to be overhauled. I'm going to tie this back to something you were talking about earlier in terms of human development at an early age. Our young people are growing up, and we just saw the SCA exam. Many students did not do well. Yeah. And I don't beat them up for that. I don't criticize them or their parents. This was a very different situation.
Indeed, yes. Coming from the pandemic.
But there's some overhaul that needs to be done with some of these systems, educationally, one. And two, people need to be able to make a living wage, two, and be made to produce.
Yes.
26% of our workforce, our labor force, works for the government. 26%. Now, I don't know if that is high or low. I should probably check that to see where do we fall. But here's the challenge. Are they efficient? So on the one hand, the society is saying the government should do for us and create opportunities and so on. And I'm all for that. The government should also make sure that those who are in the upper edges of the society are made to pay their just due, which is another problem altogether, right? That needs to happen, not just the policies. So I have said, for example, that the BIR, I don't think we need any new taxes. We just need to collect the taxes that are due. I remember hearing the Minister of Finance say that they were going to hire certain people to help with that process. I don't know if it has happened. I really don't know. But you see, it is important that the taxes are collected, and people who are supposed to pay taxes are made to pay those taxes. And then the policies are made to support the development. And I cannot speak about that without saying this. How we spend that money, Stephen, if there's a road that is supposed to be built to last 3 years, given the traffic that we have on this road, but it only lasts 3 months, and in 3 months we have all kinds of problems.
Yes.
Or we pay for 3 years level work. Yes. It means that we, the society, are being cheated. That money could have gone to healthcare, education, and other things, you see, or other roads. And so you're right. From a macro level, these policies need not just the policies and the laws that govern, but also the execution. And I dare say, it's woeful in our society. I mean, you've hit a nerve, huh? You've hit a bit of a nerve with me, but you're right. At that level, this impacts on human development.
Yes.
Because if the society is structured in such a way from a macroeconomic position that I can't make a living wage, or that the society doesn't have enough to take care of its citizens, those who are vulnerable, because the policies that are supposed to are meant to collect taxes are skewed in a particular way, it affects our ability to grow, to develop, to grow.
As humans. Richard, we are, unfortunately, we are out of time. We have
out of time.
Moment, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the Citizens Community Forum. Certainly, we have to continue this discussion. There's so many other areas that we haven't touched on as yet relative to the same business of human development and its impact on societies. But again, time is against us. I would probably just give you maybe just a couple of seconds to wrap up. You have some closing remarks, 60 seconds or less.
Human development is something that we are all responsible for. Churches, schools, family unit, government, we're all responsible for as a society. We should not just leave it up to the individuals to have the motivation to grow and develop, but we must create the conditions where growth and development is more likely if we want to have a society that we can be proud of and a society that we will leave to our children that are better than the one that we inherited.
All right, Richard Solomon there, thank you so much again for taking the time to join us on the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings, and our topic this evening, human development and its impact on societies. So that's our program for this evening, and of course you can join us again for another segment on Wednesday coming. See you then.
Thank you, Stephen.
It was a famous poet who once said, "They came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Words there from famous poet Martin Niemöller, 1892 to 1984.